Welcome to the video. Today we're going to change out these V-brakes that I put on my Wabi Thunder back to the original cantilever brakes. The reason I'm doing this is because although the V-brakes are simpler and more powerful, I liked the feel of the cantilever brakes. So pros of the V-brakes. Well, it's much simpler. It's just one wire that goes from here and then just goes right there. It's one bolt. It's extremely simple. It's a lot simpler than the cantilever brake. They also have a lot more power, so you don't need to pull the brake levers with as much force as you would on a normal cantilever brake setup. However, cantilevers you can adjust, and then you can actually make them very powerful as well. And that's the tire clearance in the back. This is just a 32 millimeter tire, and I can barely fit my finger in there. So you really can't run super wide tires with these mini V-brakes. The brakes do have a very on-off feel. You do lack modulation where you can't slowly brake. It's either the brakes are on, off. It definitely takes some getting used to. So without further ado, let's get going with it. All right, I just got to figure out which is the front set and which is the rear set. I only have one pair of brake pads that I'm going to be using on this bike, the Salmon Cool Stop pads, which is why these don't have any brake pads in them. These are also not as easy to open up when you're taking the tire off. As you can see, I'm struggling here. I'm actually going to go ahead and sand down these brake pads. I did ride this bike in the rain with these brake pads a little while ago. It's the one bad thing about rim brakes. You have to sand your pads and clean your pads and your wheels. If you ride in the rain or you get any type of grit in there, otherwise it's going to destroy your wheels. All right, brakes are off. I'm going to take this opportunity just to clean up the fork since the brakes are off right now. Usually hard to get around the posts just because the brake pads are there. Now we have to take this cable out. All right, everything's all set there. Now there is this cable stopper underneath the stem. We are gonna need that. I left it on just because I wasn't so sure if I was gonna leave the V-brakes on or put the cantilevers on. So that's how the front cable is gonna be routed. Comes from the bar up here, curves right there, right there. This is going to go down to the straddle cable. All right, it's about time to get the cantilevers on. Put the post mounts back on now. Now, one thing you want to be careful with when it comes to cantilever brakes, this cable is going to come through this cable guide and it's going to pull it up like this. If this cable, this is the front left brake cable, the front brake cable goes to the left. If this cable fails, this is left just basically falling down onto the tire. Now you see how I still have a bit of clearance. This is also a 32 millimeter wide road tire. So this is not a super wide tire and it doesn't have a lot of tread. It really has barely any tread. This is a Grand Prix 4-season tire. If you're running a bigger tire and this brake cable fails, this straddle cable is going to fall right onto the tire. If that happens at speed, you're definitely going to go over the bars. So you want to be really careful about this. You definitely want to look after this cable. And one other thing you can do is if you're riding at fast speed, just run more slick tires. That way it'll just kind of drag. It won't really just stop the tire and lock up the tire at 20 miles an hour. And then the second thing you can do is these little bolts right here, little things sticking out of the sides. Those are the adjustments for the springs right there. You could actually adjust them a little bit less, that way they're not as strong. And then you could see that's what's gonna give you that little bit of clearance. So for me, if this cable fails, it'll just bounce off the tire and there we go, that's it. The tire's still gonna roll very freely. That's one thing that I was very concerned about when I learned about cantilever brakes. You could also run a piece of front fender right there because the fender will stop it right there. You definitely got the clearance with it with these cantilever brakes as well. I particularly don't want to run full fenders all the time. I don't like running full fenders unless you're in the rain every single day, but that is one option you can do, just some sort of a brake cable stop. Definitely look after your cables if you're running cantilever brakes. Now I'm just gonna tighten this up a little bit. I wanna make sure that it feels good to me, and I want to make sure it's not too tight, not too loose. Actually, it feels a bit too tight. That feels really good. Wow. That feels so much better than the brakes that this replaced. I can't even begin to tell you how much better it feels than the crappy V-brakes. All right, front's done. Now we're just gonna do the back. All right, same thing on the back. All right, almost all set with the back ones. All right, rear brakes are done. All right, here's the finished product. You can see we've got the cable stop right there. We've got this cable that just covers the front tube, the steer tube rather. Got the straddle cable, little red cable stop, I always like that. and I do have the Salmon Cool Stop brake pads in there. Couple of notes, this piece did not come stock with these brakes. It came with this other type of cable stop, this other straddle connector, where you needed to actually have a 10mm tool, a 10mm wrench with you all the time. This one, the nice thing about this one is it just uses Allen keys. So you don't have to carry that tool around. You could do everything with a set of Allen keys. I am not going to cut these cables just yet. Reason being is I'm not too sure if I'll go back to the V brakes. These do feel really good. All right, so the brakes do feel very good. They feel very, very easy to grab. It's a nice and solid feeling when they're locked in, and I'm sure the modulation is going to be better than with the V brakes. The nice thing about cantilever brakes is you can adjust the straddle cable to be high or low if you want more power or more modulation. You could also loosen the springs. I have the springs nice and loose just so that it's nice and easy to grab the brakes. You don't really have to use a lot of force to get the brakes to engage. Now there are two reasons that may have me going back to V brakes and just leave V brakes on this bike once and for all. The first is going to be brake squeal. From what I remember, running the Salmon Cool Stop pads with the cantilever brakes, I got an insane amount of brake squeal all the time. A little bit of brake squeal, I don't mind. I get it on some of my disc brake bikes. If you have to stop short, if you have to grab the brakes hard and your brakes squeal, that doesn't bother me. But if they're squealing every single time, even under just like a light speed adjustment, that would bother me. I wouldn't like that at all. The second thing would be fork shutter on the front brakes. Fork shutter, what happens is if you're going down a big hill or if you're just cruising at speed and you just want to scrub some speed off, you grab the front brake and you could just see the front tire just kind of starts moving up and down, up and down, up and down. It's like the brake is grabbing and squealing and it's going and it's just, it does not feel safe. I do not like that. So hopefully those two things don't happen, because if they do, I'm going right back to V brakes and I'm just going to deal with it. So thanks for watching. See you next time.